بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Tuesday, June the 14th, 2022, and in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 324. And we are discussing the words of Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Holy Quran, verse 102. These broadcasts are brought to you by Laser, Lahore Ahmadiyya School for Education in Religion, which is a department of the Ahmadiyya Association for Propagation of Islam, also known as the Lahore Ahmadiyya Movement. Just to remind you that the Ahmadiyya movement was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. And he taught us that although other people say that a prophet will come after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, this is incorrect, because the Quran says that the Holy Prophet Muhammad was Khatamun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet Muhammad explained its meaning by saying it means La Nabiya Badi, there is no prophet after me. So now no prophet is going to come, whether an old one or a new one. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed that in accordance with the hadiths of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, he was a mujaddid, a reformer, who had come to defend Islam and clear misunderstandings and misconceptions about their religion from the Muslims' minds. And there were many mujaddids before him, many reformers. But his distinction was that he was the one for whom the Holy Prophet used the titles the Messiah and the Mahdi. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib Rahmatullah Alayh taught that Muslims are hasty in calling each other heretics and kafirs and out of the fold of Islam and so on. He said that the Holy Prophet had said that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you're not a Muslim, then this edict of heresy returns to the person who uttered it. So serious is this matter. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also taught that Muslims say part of prophetic revelation has been left out of the Holy Quran. And some revelation that is in the Holy Quran has been abrogated, cancelled. Its dictates no longer apply. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said this cannot be right because Allah says in the Holy Quran that I have revealed it and I shall protect it. I am its guardian. So how can anything that Allah is guarding have part of the prophetic revelation missing? Or have verses in it which whose commandments has been abrogated? Simply not possible. But if you these things, not only are they against the Holy Quran and Islam, but they also give others an opportunity to poke fun at Islam. So let us turn to the verse that we are looking at the moment, 102. And also just to remind you that, it's a long verse, so I'm not going to recite the whole verse every time, but just the part that may be relevant to our discussion. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر. And they follow, this is a continuation from the last verse which ended saying, and they were given the book and they threw the book of Allah behind their backs as if they knew nothing. And then then the Holy Quran carries on, and they follow what the devils fabricated against the kingdom of Solomon. And Solomon disbelieved not, but the devils disbelieved, teaching men enchantment. Well, we are going to look at, I was hoping we'd look at two words, yu'allimun and nas, but I only managed to cover the first word in the broadcast, so I'll only cover the first word in English as well. But before we go to that, the word enchantment, it's interesting because I want to say something about that. There are lots of people who believe in these things. And there are lots of people who make money from these things. You know, your child is ill or whatever, and they say, oh, forget doctors. Take your child to X or Y or Z, and they'll recite some incantation and blow on the child, and the child will be okay, etc. And, you know, they believe in the fact that, you know, someone has put some magic spell on someone, or they've, recited some magic spell and blown on a glass of water, and given it to you to drink, and you are now under that spell. If you look at this verse of the Holy Quran says all of that is kufr. It's heresy. It's heretical. It has nothing to do with Islam. So please remember that. And don't let these charlatans fool you and take your hard earned money. Because that's all it is. It's one of the original scams. And it happens in all religions, not just Islam. Like in many religions, if someone has a psychological problem, they'll call in the local religious leader who say, well, the devil's got into him or her, and I'll beat the devil out of them. And in attempting to beat the devil out, sometimes the person has actually been killed. So, but anyway, let's go to our notes. The first word, yu'allibuna. I've written it down incorrectly. Let me correct that. Okay. Its triliteral root, or in other words, the three letters upon which it is based, are called ayn, laam, and meem. And using those three letters, 14 words have been made and used a total of 854 times in the Holy Quran. And 382 times we have the word alim. And 163 times we have the word alim. And 105 times we have the word ilm. And 73 times we have the word alameen. And 49 times we have the word alam. 49 times we have this word alam, and 41 times we have the word allama. And what else is there? 18 times we have the word alim, and 11 times we have the word ma'lum. And then once or twice and so on, we have words like mu'allam and ma'lum and etc. These are common words in Urdu that people know. So how do you learn what something is? Well, there are two ways of doing it. One, of course, is you know what it is. And the other way is to try and describe something by its adjectives, by its qualities. If you know my name, then you can use that name and people will immediately realize, who you're talking about. Or you could say, that guy who wears glasses and has a white mustache and uses a dinner cap and broadcasts at this time and so on. Now, the more qualities, the more adjectives you give, the closer they get to the truth. But simply relying on adjectives means that you actually might miss out important information. For example, Allah is the name of the divine being. And as soon as we say Allah, we know what the other person is talking about or what we're talking about. But if we say Rahman, well, Rahman is an attribute, it can also be a name. So the question naturally arises, what do you mean by Rahman and Rahim and so on? But God is also Qahar. He's Maliki Yawmiddin. He'll ask us to account for our deeds on the day of judgment and punish or reward us accordingly. Now, if you just say Rahman and Rahim, someone might misconstrue that, well, God is Rahman and Rahim and I can do whatever I like and I'll never have to account for my deeds. So that is the problem with trying to describe someone just by their attributes. One, it's a long-winded exercise, and two, even if you give 1,000 attributes, the person may not learn exactly which item you're talking about. You can say it's it's got 4 wheels, and you can say, oh, okay, well, that sounds like a car or a jeep or a van or a truck and so on. And then you say, no, trucks have more than 4 wheels, so maybe it's not a truck. So it's one of those 3. And then you give more examples and you get closer and closer to the truth. And eventually you might say, oh, okay, so it's a car. But what you might have in mind is a particular type of car. You might be thinking of a Honda CR-V and you might describe that and they'll know that, what kind of car it is, but they may not get the fact that it's a Honda CR-V, etc. Then sometimes you learn things from the negative. For example, the Holy Quran says in chapter 8, verse 60, La ta'lamunahumullahu ya'lamuhum. What you don't know, God knows. So, here you learn about the things that you don't know about. People are doing experiments, but they don't know what a black hole is. What happens when things go into a black hole? They say nothing comes out of a black hole because the gravity is so strong, the gravitational pull, that even light cannot escape from a black hole. This is why it looks black. But then, what will happen to human beings in that black hole? Will they be crushed? How will they survive? Is there nothing inside a black hole? If the gravitational field is so strong that everything would be, crushed into powder and so on. We don't know that, but God knows. And you see, the thing about another thing to remember is that there are 2 ways of knowing, of learning. One is that God tells us something. Now, God knows everything, and when He tells us something, that is perfect knowledge. That knowledge is complete and perfect. But it could be that he's left to us to find out things. But if that's the case, then it may be that as knowledge develops, we reject our previous ideas about something. At one time, you know, particles were regarded as atoms were regarded as solid, and the name was the current bun model of the atom. That the atom is like a current bun, and the electrons are stuck on top like currents on a current bun. And then it turned out that that wasn't the case. Atoms weren't solid. They were a bit like our solar system. They have the nucleus, like the sun, and just like planets go around the sun, electrons rotate around the sun. At first, I thought electrons rotated exactly like the planets. But then they realized that, no, that's not the case. It's like a cloud. So the same electron could be going like this, and then like this, and then like that, and so on. So his rotation is like spherical. It's like a football. And you don't know that electron can be anywhere in that. The same thing happened with light. Newton said light consists of particles. Because he was trying to describe how reflection and refraction takes place. I don't know. I don't think he knew about interference and diffraction, but if he did, he chose to ignore it. Huygens, on the other hand, said no, light is like a wave. So if you assume that light is like a wave, then you can easily explain the patterns you get from interference and diffraction. So people switched over and they said, no, Newton, yeah, well, he was a great scientist, but he made a mistake. And then, of course, Einstein did some experiments and he showed that under certain conditions, light behaves as if it's a particle. It's called the photoelectric effect. Solar panels are based on that. Light shines on certain metals and causes electricity to flow. Einstein discovered that, called the photoelectric effect. You can only explain that if you assume that light behaves like particles and not waves. So a new concept was born, the wave-particle duality. And that is, well, we don't really know what light is. Some things we can explain if you assume it's particles. Other things we can explain if you assume it's waves. So it behaves the way it does, either one way or the other. We can't tell what it is. And that's the point with imperfect knowledge, that, it develops. And what you believe to be the truth at one point may actually be totally untrue at another point. So, and you also, and the interesting thing is that, God says, or talks about talim as well, which is knowledge. So we have Ar-Rahmanu Allama al-Quran, chapter 55, verse 21. God, well, the Beneficent, He taught you the Quran. And then it says, Allama bil Qalb, chapter 96, verse 4. How did He teach you? He taught you with the pen. Wa ullimtum malam ta'lamun, chapter 6, verse 92. He taught you those things. You had no idea what they were. Things that you did not know. And there is an important truth hidden in that, which is that until humans learned to preserve knowledge, there was very little development. Because, you have a scientist or a mathematician or someone who spend his life doing research, etc., and teaching people as well. But he didn't have any means of preserving that. So when he died, it may be that people to whom he talked, to whom he taught, remember some things, some of the things that he taught. But they may forget others. And by the time you're in sort of second generation, third generation, all his knowledge is probably disappeared. And God is saying here that until he started teaching you with the pen, your development wasn't going very far. And once you started preserving knowledge, then you started learning things that you didn't know. And that's the point about research. And this is why research is important. When I don't know about other countries, but in this country, certainly when you're in the last year of your graduation, you get projects. They just give you a project, do this and document your results and, submit them. And we had question answer as well at the end after submitting the, it's called a viva. It's like an oral, well, it is an oral exam, not like an oral exam. But the point is that you preserve that knowledge. You've written that experiment up. If you were unable to do that, you would have had to verbally explain these things to people. And they may understand them correctly or not. And when God says, you see, in chapter 3, verse 164, God says that you allimuhumul kitaba wal hikmah. And that is, they teach the book and wisdom. So God says here there are two types of knowledge. One is in God's book, and one that we acquire ourselves through our own efforts, by study or research or whatever. And this is what the in chapter 2 in Al-Baqarah verse 31, and God says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And he taught Adam the name of all the things. Now, I mean, obviously, if you look at the universe, it's impossible for someone to know even just the names of everything. If you were to ask me the names of all the planets in the solar system, I probably couldn't do it. Even if I could, it probably wouldn't be in the right order. I'd just be saying a name that comes into my head. But as I said right at the beginning, that knowledge of something has two aspects. One, what its name is, and two, its qualities, its attributes. So by saying that God taught Adam all the names, it doesn't mean Adam sat there shaking back and forth, reciting these names until he knew them by heart. What it means is that God gave Adam the ability to learn things by his own efforts. But God puts these things in us. How does a honeybee know what it has to do? To go around and take the nectar, take it back to the beehive, make honey, protect the honey, the queen bee, and 1,000 other things. Bee colonies have scouts, which go out to find a suitable place for them to build a nest. They have soldiers who protect the queen and the hive. They have workers who work and clean the hive and make the honey and all that kind of thing. I mean, how do these things know? They're not like human beings. They cannot write and preserve this knowledge. And, scout bees don't get the equivalent of Google Maps that they, just type in suitable places to build a beehive, and 10 options come up, and some go somewhere else, and have a look at them. There's no manual that you type in and say, what does a worker bee does, and a job description comes up. It's all in their nature. How did it get into their nature? That God put these things into their brains, into their hearts. And that's the point about Adam being different, humans being different, that honeybees can only do the work assigned to them. They can't go out of that. But Adam was given the ability to learn and to decide. He was told what the right thing is, but he was given the ability to decide. Do I want to do it? Don't I want to do it? And so on. So, with that, we've slightly gone over our time. I take my leave of you with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah keep the whole of humanity safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.